its means. All right. So, in terms of borrowing, I think by budget, I mean, there was that kind of fiscal deficit. So, by all means, I mean, government was going to borrow, which I understand. But I'm looking at the rates of the borrowing, which is significantly increasing. Because as I said, if you borrowed just 53 billion Ghana cedis for just the whole of 2025, from January to December, and from just January to July, you are borrowing about 34 billion. I don't maybe they will rationalize the remaining months. I don't know, maybe to keep the figure at a low rate so that they don't exceed the 2025 one. Then that would be good. But
Right.
as far as you are going that trajectory, we have to raise this flag that it looks like your current borrowings are trying to exceed that of last year, which you have to take critical look of it. And that's why I said mostly, they become comfortable borrowing when they realize that they have that fiscal space. They see that GDP very down. They see the servicing rate also very down. So they feel they have more room. But I said, if you want to go in that direction, it's possible that maybe because they are doing that because remember they have increased their gold purchase from 20 to 30. So maybe it's a means of financing that 10% additional sales that they are going to make from gold or other key sectors that they are going into. If that is the case, then I think it's a good thing. And I think I want to check, the numbers to see whether that is, the trajectory that they are going. If that is the case, then that is a good thing, right? But government will always have to be very. I know this finance minister is very prudent. I know he is taking the right decisions at the right time. But I think we have to also give out the warning so that he knows about it
Mm.
and see the right thing to do at that time. Okay, so maybe as I said, maybe what is driving the current borrowing may be due to those factors, trying
Right.
to go into more productive areas to increase government revenue or get more forex. Okay, so if that's the case, that's a good thing. But you'll be watching to see the direction of the borrowing where it is going, so that we can bring the early warning signs for the right steps to be taken to avoid any spillage that will drive us back to 2022 problems.
Mm. Absolutely. Now, I tried to look up some data from, as far back as 2024, and I found out that, the Bank of Ghana reported that public debts fell from 726.7 billion Ghana cedis at the end of 2024 to 641 billion Ghana cedis at the end of 2025, while our debt to GDP ratio fell from 61.8% and to 45.3%. Uh, what would you say is, or what explains such a significant improvement? How much of it is genuine fiscal improvement? How much of it is the effect of the debt restructure? How much of it is a currency appreciation, and how much of it is simply maybe the denominator effect of our stronger GDP?
Yes, so you see, if you look at the city terms, you
Mm.
realize that if you are not looking at the dollar relationship, you realize that we borrowed about 53 billion Ghana cedis. I think what accounted for the decline was basically the cedi appreciation. So
Mm.
you see, for your cedi to start 2025 at let's say 15 cedis, let's
Yeah.
even assume 15 cedis, per dollar, for it to move to 10 cedis, maybe 10.5 cedis per dollar, that is about 41% appreciation.
Right.
And that 41, and because and at that time the standard debt was small in terms of, the standard debt we pay in dollars. All right, so that was also more, very significant portion of that debt. So once you have seen huge CD appreciation, that means that it's going to reduce your external debt significantly.
Mm.
And that is the reason why you are seeing that improvement. So that it wasn't really about repaying part of the debt, but it is because at that time the external debt was very significant portion of our debt. Okay, once you are seeing about 41%, which means that that dollar dominated debt will also fall by about 41%, which is very, very significant. We can't play with that. That is why when people are discussing issues about good board about the benefit. This is one of the benefit that we are deriving from, that government policy. But the point is, it has reduced your dollar settlement debt by about 40%. Assuming, let's say, the external debt was, let's say, 38 billion, million and dollars, and that has fallen about 41%. That is very significant, and that is why you are seeing, even though we borrowed we borrowed in 2025, we say ended, I ended the year with our debt falling by that
Falling,
huge
right.
margin. Okay, so it is clearly the case of the appreciation of the city
Of the
that
city.
saw that significant fall in our debt to GDP ratio.
Right. But that means that in dollar terms, the amount will still be around the same figure, but of course it will drop when it comes to the city terms because of the appreciation of the Ghanaian city, isn't it?
Exactly,
Mm.
exactly the point.
Mm.
Exactly the point. So if you look at the dollar terms, you realize that there has not been any fall in the debt, but because the city has appreciated, when you convert to the city term, that's where you see a significant fall. And in fact, this year up to July, the debt has risen again, even with the city very stabilized at
Mm.
that same rate, and we are seeing our debt rising again to around 719. I think if you check, you see there's around 719 billion Ghana cedis,
Mm.
which is basically coming from more of domestic debt compared to external debt. So my meaning, the benefit that we accrue, which we are trying to even maintain the CD at that same rate. We are not going to see that significant improvement in our CD again, like what we
Mm.
saw.
Yeah.
So if we are seeing the thing rising again to 719, where it is not coming from the issue of, the exchange rate. You see, let me go back and me give you a clarity.
Sure.
The reason why we had a serious jump in our debt was also as a result of the CD depreciation. You see,
Mm.
the CD depreciated to a point where, we started, let's say, 2017. I'm just giving you numbers for you to appreciate how, CD stability and appreciation and depreciation really affects our debt stock,
That's so right.
because normally they are, denominated in dollars, then we convert to, cedis.
CDs,
In
yeah.
fact, if you go back to 2015, 16 to 2017, the exchange rate was around, let's say, 4 cedis. But you see, it went from 4 cedis to, let's say, 10.
Mm.
Look at how it significantly impacted our debt. Then even up to 15 cedis. And so that serious jump of our debt from, let's say, I was around 140 billion Ghana cedis to about maybe 700 billion cedis. Most of them were coming from our CD movement. You get it? And as the CD also started, rising against the dollar, then we also saw, the debt also falling a bit. But you see, now that we are started building the debt again, we are not going to enjoy that huge appreciation of the CD again. And that is why it is important for some of us to give that early warning signs, so that government become more cautious about its appetite for borrowing. Because now we
Mm.
have the space, we have the fiscal space to borrow, we have the investor confidence to borrow. Anything you want to say, it will be easy for the investors to buy in. You get it? And at that point, that is where you have to be very careful, because I know if you continue to go on that trajectory,
Mm.
definitely there will be problems in the
Problems.
future.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have to manage it very well.
Mm. I see. All right. John, let's continue. And I want us to talk about, let's try and turn our attention to the debt restructuring a bit. And we know that a country can still owe a substantial amount of money, but have much less pressure on its annual budget because the terms of repayment have changed, because there's been maybe a restructuring
Yes.
sort of. So when we say that our debt problem, because that's a narrative, some people, I've heard a lot of people talk about, I don't know whether it's a political statement, but people have said that our debt problem has improved, When we say that, are we actually talking about the amount that a country owes? Are we talking about the amount that we have to pay each year, or our ability to comfortably meet those obligations?
Yes. Okay. So I think the good thing with this current arrangement is that most of our debts, I mean, from our because the debt exchange program have been moved
Mm.
to next year. Most of them, 2027, 2028, 2029, because of the debt exchange program that we engage in. But you see, what I find it a bit comfortable is that government is not waiting for 2027 to come or 2028 to come for them to, start thinking through how they will pay it. They have started saving towards that.
Right.
And I think that is very remarkable.
Mm.
Like for a government to say, I own this amount and I'm supposed to pay this in 2027, and I have already started planning. I don't know if you listen to the budget, he made it clear the
Yeah.
amount that
Yeah.
they have saved and gave even a lot of assurance to our creditors that by the time the year ends, they have accumulated enough to pay. And that should give us a comfort that indeed this government is a future thinking government, has this plan, has this everything planned out. And I wish maybe this current finance minister will continue for some time. Even if you
Mm.
want to change his position, if he gets him to be there for 8 good years, and I think there will be a lot of positives. You
Mm.
see, the point is that as for debt, even if you go to the question that you asked, if you go to US debt to GDP is more than 100%. In fact, they own far more than the economy, but they are very comfortable. Have you
Mm.
heard any creditor or something even downgrading their credit rating?
No.
So basically, it's not really about the debt stock that matters. It's more about the servicing of the
Of
stock.
the stock.
Because you see, uh, every country, whether even China, Russia, US, in fact, the way governments are structured to own. The reason is that you see, your tax revenue cannot meet the many expenditures you need to, spend on. And these debts have been accumulating over so many years. You
Yeah.
get it's not
Yeah.
just 1 year debt; it's over 20-year debt, and always you will borrow. So you cannot get to a point where you say you want to settle. No, that shouldn't be the issue about the debts you are paying. The issue is more about whether you can meet, based on the schedules of payment, whether
Right.
at any point in time you can meet the schedules of payment. And once you are comfortable in terms of maybe interest and all that, because always, in fact, what we normally do is that we borrow to settle the debt. If in actual fact, we don't really use our tax revenue to pay debt, but the trajectory should be always getting the new debt at a lower rate to settle the old debt. That is normally the case of every government. So it's like I own. I just need to have the space to be always borrow to settle it, but I must borrow at a lower rate to settle the old stock.
Mm.
The reason why Ghana went through this difficult time was that you see, we became credit risks to the point where we're not getting any new loans from the outside world, right? So it means that you can't borrow new,
Mm.
right, to settle the debt. And even if you get access to borrow, then it's like you are going to borrow at a high rate, even if the market will allow. And you see, if you are replacing old debt with high rate debt, that is very catastrophic for your economy. And so the key point should not be about the level of debt, the debt stock, because as for the debt stock, it will always be rising. In fact, even if you want to use our whole GDP, and when you talk about GDP is talking about not just like revenue, it's also talking about even all your capital stock, assuming this country want to sell everything we have, including the monument, the rivers, the waters that have been valued. If you want to buy, like sell everything,
Yeah.
45% of it is what is going to pay all our debt.
Our debt.
So it's like then
Mm.
we must get to a point where we want to sell the country if you want to settle our debt. And so the problem is not really about debt stock. The problem is more about your ability to grow your economy in a way where we see that your economy is always in the good position
Mm.
to settle its recurrent debt.
Debt.
That is always the conversation. In
Mm.
fact, if you go to UK, for example, they also have a very high debt stock, debt to GDP ratio. And that is why in the US, for example, they have always been raising they have a constitutional limit to the debt to GDP. but they have always been raising it. In fact, it's around now 120%. So it's like they have a debt of 120% against their GDP. So if
GDP,
US want
right?
to sell everything, like if all that they have, if they sell it, they can't even pay the debt. So I don't think the level of stock is the problem, but you must always put yourself in a position where your economy is growing, that when you compare to the GDP, to the debt, it's always on the low side. And you are generating that, and you are having that fiscal space to be always borrowing to pay that debt. That has always been the strategy in settling debts across the world.
I see. Now, but John, of course, I mean, we've restructured our domestic debt. We've restructured our euro bond as well. We've reached agreement with, official creditors, and I mean, we continue to negotiate some of the external commercial creditors as well. The IMF also, says we've made some progress, and they've been able to even assess us as, our risk of debt districts as moderate. But isn't there a danger that we confuse debt restructuring with debt resolution?
Exactly. And I think you are on point. So you see, what basically we are doing is just postponing our debt. I think it should be clear to us that the strategy we are adopting is just postponing our debt to give us the time. So here we are talking about we having the time, the relief for just this current period to structure our economy in such a way that we become more progressive and be able to generate more revenue to pay our interest and all those things that creditors have accepted to postpone. So you see, we are not really resolving our debt crisis. We are just postponing. But that's why I said that the good thing is that as we are postponing, it looks like we are also planning ahead towards it, so that we don't have those challenges. And I think that's the very good thing by the finance minister to say that, okay, I've been relieved, but I'm not going to spend that money. So you see, what the finance minister is saying that my creditor says I shouldn't pay now, but I'm not going to spend that money. I'm not going to misuse that money. I'm going to put that money down to even maybe in an interest-bearing instrument that can be, building more interest, so that when I get there, I don't need to look for another money anywhere to pay this debt. You see, and that is a very good thing. That's why I say I'm applauding the current finance minister. I think he is doing things right at this moment about our debt, restructuring, sending the right signals to our debt holders, communicating. And then, and I don't know if you have noticed, he is always very strong communicating this on his social media when he gets opportunity to talk on radio. All this to give investors confidence that Ghana is not just, like what we are used to. Everything will be settled. We have already planned for it, and I think it's a good thing, right? It's the best decision to make. So I don't think we have also just relaxed. The good thing is that we have not relaxed and just waiting for the debt postponement to be over. We are just also building the necessary money, okay, on gradual basis, so that once we get to that level, the money is already there to be paid, like to be used for the payment. So that in itself gives us a confidence that we're also trying to resolve our debt crisis. So I think we are doing the two at the same time, postponing and also finding ways to resolve it by reducing it, by saving towards that.
John, what has fundamentally changed in our fiscal architecture that should give us, some sort of confidence that things will be different in the coming years?
Yes. I think in terms of the fiscal operations, I see this government more prudent, more cautious, and this whole thing of value for money office and looking through every expenditure carefully and not allowing government institutions to spend anyhow and trying to control SOE, state-owned enterprise, because at first, a state-owned enterprise can organize loan by itself, get the loan, use it for whatever they want. And at the end of the day, if they can't pay, they pass on to government. And I think that this current, government has been able to curtail that. So everything must go through the finance minister, and every expenditure must be explained and be approved by the finance minister. So he's having that total oversight over our government spending. Because you see, the truth of the matter is that our problem has been, out of control expenditure by government agencies. And always because you see, the point is that you have estimated revenue. You don't get that revenue. And the expenditure that you also estimated, you have exceeded that expenditure. So you see, so let's say you budgeted to get 20 million cedis. Now that 20 million, you didn't get it. So let's say you got about 16 million. Now, even in your first budget, you projected to even spend more. So let's say you projected to spend 25 million cedis. Now you didn't get the revenue of 20 and you have spent about 35. So look at the gap. So the gap is coming from one, you spending over your budgeted and also not getting your budget revenue, which increase your borrowing. Because then how do you fix that gap? You have to borrow more to settle those debts. So once, okay, now what we are doing is that you are even spending below your budgeted expenditure and trying to exceed your revenue, then you are breaking that gap. And that is a very fundamental, big, solution to our government fiscal problem. That, okay, from now onwards, what we do is that we'll try and even go beyond our revenue estimation and spend below our expenditure target. Once we do that, and that's what is creating this fiscal surplus for us. So you see, like that's why we are getting this primary surplus, okay, because it looks like we try to cut down the expenditure and we try to raise the revenue bit. So once you continue on that path for, let's say, 10 years, you see, that's the problem is the sustainability. So if we can travel this path for about 10 good years, then you see that we are breaking the deficit. We are breaking the deficit. So you break the deficit to a point where now you can create surplus. And now once the surplus starts, then that's where you have arrived. If you go to Argentina, let me give you a typical example. Argentina, president came and said, for me, I will always make sure there's surplus. I'm not going to create any deficit. And, if that it was, because when it happens that way, you have to cut your expenditure significantly and improve your revenue. And, for about 2-3 years, Argentina economy is seeing progress. I mean, they have achieved a surplus, just that, I mean, it also sometimes affects your economy in terms of the growth, because there will be some places you cut the expenditure that will affect your entire economy growth. And that has affected them a bit. But apart from that, they have seen surplus for about 2 good years. Do you get it? So you can, but I don't want us to go by that path. I mean, we have a lot of problems. I mean, a lot of social problems, a lot of, infrastructure deficits, a lot of, income gaps and all that. So I don't think we can travel that path. But if we can be reducing the deficits gradually, we are reducing the deficits gradually for over 10-year period, I'm sure we will get there.
I see. But
so this is the very fundamental issue that we are solving and is helping us put our economy in a more sustainable way. Okay, and also we also getting a lot of direct influence from our natural resources like gold. It's also really helping us.
Does the IMF program we currently are under? I don't think if you mentioned that. Does that contribute in any way?
So you see, the IMF program that we are under now is just a voluntary program where we we still want to be disciplined in our choices. So as for that program, it's not really forcing us to do anything. I mean, it's not forcing us to just that we are telling them that, hey, I mean, we don't need money from you, but we still want you to be our watchdog, and we want to still be disciplined and go by, I mean, what you are advising, and we want your advice, your continual advice. Okay, so I mean, we want you to play a surveillance over our economy and tell us what we are doing wrong so that we can fix things. So that is also helping a bit. But I say it's not something compulsory. So if the government can decide that, hey, that's why I said it all boils down to, I mean, the government's willingness to do the right thing. Because if you are not taking money for anybody, nobody can force you to act in any way. But for us to even come under that arrangement to say, oh, we are not asking for money from you, but we realize that normally when we are out of your control, my ministries, my agencies just do whatever they like. So for me to let them know that no, I'm still under your grading point. I have to do the right thing. I think that one can force everybody to, or convince everybody to listen to me. And I think basically that's what the government has done.
Right.
That if he wants to say we can't spend beyond this, then let's say a minister says why, then the finance minister can say, IMF will mark it. So we can do that. So I think it was a very great strategy that they adopted after we exited the IMF. Because you see, sometimes when you explain to these government agencies, ministries, and all that, why certain things can be done, they feel you, the minister, is trying to be too hard. As everybody is complaining, he doesn't spend, he doesn't do this. Assuming we are not under any IMF surveillance, it will be more of like people will feel like it's self-inflicted
Yeah.
pain
Yeah.
that the finance minister is trying to impose on everybody. And so it's a smart move to still do the right thing.
I
So,
see. Okay.
so I think it's a contributory factor to it also.
Right. Right. So the essentially the IMF is just monitoring to sort of raise red flags where necessary, isn't it?
Exactly the point. That's their function now.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to. I mean, I'm going to take you back to the 20% figure, and I want us to return there. But just before that, let me announce the phone lines in case anybody wants to join the conversation. So, if you just tuned in, this is Business Breakfast on Z101.9 FM with me, Nitra B. Hammond, and this morning. My guest is John Che. He's a financial analyst, and we're talking about whether Ghana has turned the corner in terms of our debt reset. And this is actually coming from the the finance minister's comment he made that today we only spend 20% of our revenue servicing our debt when we used to do that. I mean, we used to spend about 50% doing the same thing about a few years ago. And so that's what we're talking about, whether we really turned the corner. But the point we've made so far is that no, we haven't entirely turned the corner. There's still some need for some fiscal consolidation and all of that. But you are free to join us. Send us a WhatsApp on 0544 321019. 0544 321019. Also, you can call us on 030 3956 and then we give you the opportunity to share your thoughts with us this morning. We're streaming live on Facebook at ZFMGH and on YouTube we're at Z Multimedia. Please feel free to drop a comment and I'll read them for you as well. All right, John, let me come back to you. Now, like I said, I want to return to the 20% figure because I think our listeners need to understand it properly. Now, suppose government collects 100 cedis in revenue and less than 20%, or let's say 20% goes toward servicing debt. That sounds dramatically better than, of course, spending 50 cedis or more. But does that automatically mean that government now has 80 Ghana cedis available to spend on development?
Yes, yes, yes. And the thing that you see, in fact, if you look at our expenditure in relation to our revenue, you realize that interest was, just debt payment was taken about 50%. So if debt takes 50% and salaries take 30%, how much is left for development? So you could see that, in fact, over the years, as a result, our capital expenditure has not really seen massive lift because of, the way we're spending so much on interest and compensation. But once, the debt has reduced, so you have about 30 more to spend, right? Assume you even want to add just 10 or 20 to capital expenditure. We, the ordinary people, are going to see better roads. We, the ordinary people, are going to see better infrastructure in terms of our electricity, our water systems, our, and for our transportation system. So it's something very positive for us. And the good thing is that, in fact, the current interest rate we are paying on debt has dramatically reduced to about 5%, which means it's even going to give government more room. So apart from all these negotiations, it's going to even give government more room to get enough revenue to spend on what really matters and what really
Right.
grow an economy. So we will see our roads, and I think it has started this big push. Do you ask yourself, where are they getting? Because we have not really borrowed a big money for this big push project, but we are seeing serious development going on. Yesterday, I even saw, I think they are doing something at Ashanti region, a road cutting across 6 different districts. and the rest. So these are all monies we are allowing it to, fix our infrastructure problems. Okay, so
Mm.
it's a very good news to us that at least now government has about 30% more to spend on development, to care for the needy, to care for the poor, to help with social spending. It's a very good thing. I think we all need to be happy about this current development.
Right. Okay. But that brings us to the point you made earlier about whether now it means that there's more room to spend, and where exactly those spendings must go. You know, because I think that's the most important question around the finance minister statement, that if debt service has fallen so dramatically, then what should government do with that fiscal space? I mean, as an analyst,
Yes,
what do
yes,
you
yeah.
advise? What specific things would you advise government to focus on?
Yes. In my view, we need to focus on, growth producing expenditure. When I say growth
Mm.
producing expenditure, or let's say growth
Like productive
enabling
sectors?
expenditure. Okay, so like we have to focus on things that contribute to the economy directly. So, for example, roads, for example, because if you have good roads, so people don't know the benefit. Assume people you can take 1 hour from here to Kumasi. People can stay because sometimes even in Accra, when you are going to work, you can be in traffic for an hour. I'm sure you have witnessed that people wake up at dawn and a whole lot. So if there's a expressway where people know that even if I stay in Kumasi or around Kumasi anywhere, I can come to Accra in 30 minutes, 1 hour. See how it's even going to relieve this rent pressure and create demand in other nearby places that people can live and come to Accra and work. You get it? So we have to, spend the money on growth enabling projects. Like, so for example, as I said earlier, like maybe the way we have increased our gold purchase, we should also look at how we can own more of our oil fields. We
Mm.
can also look at how most of our natural resources that are here, we need to focus on how we can strategically invest in them. If we believe government cannot do it, we should support the private sector. Government will have a percentage share. Like Goa is a government OMC,
Yeah.
but Goa is also owned by other shareholders, and government doesn't really 100%, directly control it, and they are doing so well. So it means that if we can strategically invest in some sectors that can bring us returns, we have to use some of these surpluses we are getting to strategically invest in
Mm.
some of these projects.
Right.
And once we do that, so agriculture, every sectorism, you know, during the 2024 election, people promised a lot of things, how they can turn the tourism. Maybe we should go into it, look for ideas that can generate some revenue in a very short period, invest in them. Yeah, I think somebody like, Kennedy Japan was mentioning a lot of things that some of the things we do can be used to. I don't know if you heard, they say coconut. If you take coconut, for example, the many things that it can produce, maybe it's the right time and it's going to create a lot of employment. So maybe this is the right time to look into some of these ideas and see how we can strategically invest this 30% relief that we have to, because you see, I want it to be something like, this relief that we are getting, it is bringing us profit, right?
Yeah.
We are
Yeah.
using to do something that will bring us profit. So that even as you have postponed these debts to subsequent years, we have been able to use our savings to do a lot
A lot.
that
Yeah.
generates returns on itself to pay all these debts that we own.
Yeah.
All right. So I think we have to really focus on growth enabling projects.
And
It
I
shouldn't be the usual things
mm,
that we can't finish in 4 years. It
I
should be
agree.
something that we can easily do it in a year for it to start bearing fruit. Look at the Kwame Nkrumah monumental thing that they did, and look at the revenue that it's generating. This is
Yeah.
one of the growth enabling projects I'm talking about. You can look at the numbers. How many people visit Kwame Nkrumah Memorial Park and the monies that we are generating from it. So it means that if government can strategically invest in some of these things, we can really make a lot of revenue from that.
Mm. I agree. I agree. And so my concern has been that, I mean, of course, we've seen that, I mean, there's been a reduction in how much we use, how much of our revenue we actually spend in, servicing debt, but it shouldn't end there, right? It must go on to look at that 30% that is left and where we are putting it. I'm glad that you talk about the same thing. Very important. But
Exactly.
as we wrap up, I want to ask that, do you ever foresee a time when Ghana would not have to borrow to service its debt? And what would it take to get to that level?
You see, the only issue is about sustainability. And so the sustainability demands that, I mean, the problem is that, as far as there can be a political change, as far as the people there, I mean, with all these foresight, are subjected to change when there's a change of government. These are threats to whatever we are enjoying now. There could be another finance minister who has different thinking, who has different, mindsets, who want to do things. Do you know there are some even ministers who believe in foreign dominance over local dominance? There are some people who believe that foreigners do better than locals. So, I mean, in his thinking, he will structure the economy for the foreign people to take over. So these are more of policy related and something. So if you really want this to last for long, maybe there should be institutional, I don't know how to say it, which is very difficult because even if you go to UK and US, anytime there's a change of government and new ministers coming on board, a lot of things changes. A lot of things, the policy direction changes, sustainability of programs change, a whole lot of things. So personally, I would love it was like the way that the previous finance minister had about 8 years, all right, to
Yeah.
be in affairs for so long. 8 years was good for things to be done differently.
Differently.
If this one that I mean we are seeing maybe good trajectory now can also be there for a little longer. I'm proposing even 12 years. I'm sure maybe he may have a presidential ambition. I don't you see some people are saying, oh, but I think the last time I was listening to him, he said he's building the institution in such a way that even if it's not there, the what have been done will continue.
Yeah.
Trust me, it will be very difficult, especially when a new person has different mindset and different policy in mind. That could change everything that we are witnessing
That's
now.
true.
Okay, so my only problem is sustainability. And the sustainability is really coming from the policy direction. And the policy direction comes from the minister in charge. So some of the things I feel should be more of bipartisan policies. You see, in US, for example, when you go to US, they have something called budget office. The budget office is a bipartisan office where both the Democrats and the Republicans are represented. And they are there to make sure some of the policies are for a long term. So no matter the government that comes into office, you can't change them. You can't change them. They have that. And you see that budget office in such a way that it's mixed up of equal Democrats and Republicans. So
Right.
once they have approved on a particular direction, that direction continues. So the only thing you can do as a president or finance minister is to, I mean, subject yourself to those policies and bring your policies to fit into that direction. So if we can also do that, because it looks like, you look at even the gold board conversation where we are making it partisan. Something like this, strategic offices, we need to make it non-partisan, where there will be continuity. So if there's any policy, let's say a debt implementation strategy that you want it to continue, okay, once it becomes bipartisan and the two parties are well represented, there can be sustainability of those programs. If you don't do that, and we always make it bipartisan, like partisan stuff for votes and whatever, all new governments will come and change it, and we will always have to start from the beginning.
Right.
Before there was I don't know if you remember, there was a stabilization levy that
Yes.
was accumulated until 2020. Then when the crisis happened, they spent all. You get it? So there should be a way where some policies are given to bipartisan offices, and we need to create that. I've not seen that in our current, parliamentary framework. We need to create those bipartisan offices that is more permanent to, make sure some policies are sustainable and everlasting and goes beyond one political cycle. When we do that, I'm sure we'll be fine.
All right. John, I think that brings us to the conversation around whether we need strong institutions or we need strong men. And if we had some more time, we would have continued the conversation. But unfortunately, we'll have to go now. I'm really grateful for your time, and I'm grateful that you shared your insights with us this morning. Thank you so much.
You are welcome. Thank you too. I appreciate your listening.
You're most welcome. All right. So that was John Jay. He's a financial analyst, and he joined us this morning talking about our debt situation as a country and whether the fact that we now use less than or spend less than 20% of our revenue on servicing debt is something that we should celebrate entirely, or maybe there are some certain things around that really. And he says that the whole point is that it is good news, but there are still some more things that we have to do to be able to sustain this for a very long time. And so that's the conversation we've had this morning right here on the Business Breakfast on Zed. If you miss any part of the conversation, head straight to our YouTube channel. The video will be there. You can play back and then make sense of the conversation we've had this morning. I'm really grateful to him, John Che. He's a financial analyst, and thanks so much to you as well for being with us right up until now. We're back again tomorrow for more interesting conversations. Until then, please keep listening to Z101.9 FM. My name is Trebi Hammond. I'm on all social media platforms. You can connect and let's continue the conversation from there. I'll see you tomorrow. Take care of yourself. Up next is A Brighter Side with Jeremy Okoria Mwako. Bye-bye.